Welcome everyone to another installment of Tyler Spain's online education. Wherever you may be, whether you're at home or in your office like I am, I truly hope that you and your family and your friends are safe and that you're enjoying everything that we're trying to put together for you. Because it really is an exciting time in the world of tile. And today, I want to talk mostly to the installers. Now, it doesn't matter if you happen to be an installer or you just work with them. I think that everyone's going to be able to get something out of today's presentation. And so I call this presentation the influencer because tile professionals, installation professionals really are the backbone that our industry rests on. I can't tell you as a technical consultant how many times I get called out to look at jobs and people are wondering whether it's a product issue or it's an installation issue or what's going on. And you know, the seasoned and educated professional tile installers are really the unsung heroes of this industry. We can do all the innovation and all the creative design we want, but if it doesn't get into a site properly, it doesn't matter. So I want to talk to the installation professionals and the design professionals that are utilizing them on their jobs on a daily basis and give you a little bit of tips and tricks to leverage tile to its full potential and really be the ally of your installer. Installers, I want to give you some tips on how to quote your jobs, hopefully make sure that you get more jobs and get more tile into the jobs that you're doing, and do creative work that is fulfilling and doesn't cause you as many headaches as it can. So without further ado, I'm going to get into it, but just wanted to let you all know I've been Tyler Spain's technical consultant for over a decade now. Worked in the industry for over 2 decades in just about every aspect I could possibly throw myself into, whether it's purchasing or sales or hard surface consulting for designers. For the past decade, I've worked as a creative director, developing product as well. So. And lastly, I also worked as an apprentice installer under 2 master trades from Germany for about 5 years. So I'm trying to give you as holistic a perspective as I possibly can on what's going on in the industry and what our installers really have to deal with today. So tile really is the solution that your clients are looking for. And that's the most important perspective for everybody to have today, is that whatever someone's looking for, it really doesn't matter what kind of building they're doing or what area of the building they're specifying for. Tile really is the de facto best choice in so many arenas. And you know, the one issue and sticking point that a lot of people have with that statement is the cost. And I hope I'm going to give you some strategies and some arguments to rethink your perspective on tile's cost, and actually reduce the cost of tile in your projects in some ways. So I want to improve your chances to get a hassle-free install, when one of the biggest things for an installer is just not having headaches when they're trying to make a designer's vision come to life, and give your client an affordable budget and feel like they're getting the kind of return on investment that they should be getting with tile. We're gonna go through different project stakeholders' concerns and perspectives to give you guys an idea of how to address those and hopefully ensure that more and more tile gets into our projects. We're going to look at some new product categories and what makes them really tick and be so applicable to the design language that's going on today, and some testing and certifications and things like that, as well as the inherent benefits of tile and why it builds in to be the de facto choice. So First, we need to answer the question for our clients or our specifiers, why tile? And give them a reboot on the cost equation perspective. We're going to get a little bit into gauges, which is the thickness of the tile, because that's one of the biggest areas of innovation today, and leveraging gauges to utilize the minimum, what I call the minimum effective dose. You may be familiar with that term. It's utilized in a lot of different areas, whether it's personal health or all kinds of things, but it really applies to tile today with what we're doing with gauges. We're going to look at tile in general and how it really answers all of our clients' questions. We're going to start there, and then we're going to loop back to it, and finally I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on specification that may be helpful for you to give your clients absolutely everything. So where we're starting is why tile? We might have to jump a few hurdles right now because there are so many low cost or seemingly low cost competitive options, like LVT and various others. So the first thing that we need to do is make our clients understand that tile is the #1 choice for them. There's some great resources on tileofspain.com. If you go /info/values, there's a fantastic video that goes through a bunch of stuff. It's great content to feature on your blogs or websites or in your personal feeds, whether you're an installer or a design professional. But #1, tile really speaks to all clients' top of mind concerns today. And there's ways to finesse a budget so that it can incorporate as much tile as you want to, both for the product itself and for the installation of it. Because the installed cost is usually where we get a lot of pushback from clients. So I hope I'm going to give you some tools to deal with that. And the fact that it is a workhorse, and with all the different gauges and formats and styles that we're creating today in tile, it really is possible to specify the minimum effective dose and get more of it into our projects. So when we're selecting tile today, or when a client is selecting tile, there's so many things that go through our minds. If you think about what makes you tick and what drives your purchasing decisions, I think you'll see that there's some universal concepts that apply to just about everything we buy, whether it's something for our design project or our building project, or something that we're just bringing into our home. We want to have a connection to products that we choose today. Something has to have a story, whether it's a history, like ceramics having millennia of history as a building material and art medium, or just some sort of relatable story that has a connection to us, that tells us we need to choose that product instead of something else. And I think that's something tile has in spades. Obviously, safety is a big concern, especially for things that we're putting into our buildings, but also the safety of the workers that are installing it. And the industry is making some great advancements in terms of, actually there's a pilot project that ITC, one of the research branches within the Tile of Spain umbrella, is doing right now, that's looking at silicosis, one of the things that a lot of competitive industries have touted as a danger of ceramics. There's treatments that are being done to the silicates within ceramics that are making them less harmful, both for the workers in the factories, but also for the trades on site when they're cutting the material. But tile being an inert, totally natural material, and we'll get into a bunch of the other benefits of it, makes it extremely safe. The environmental footprint and the stewardship of our manufacturers is another huge key concern. And finally, and most importantly for a lot of clients, whether they're builders, architects, or end users themselves, the return on investment and building that story so that they can see what the amortized cost is. And we'll get into that in just a sec. Or right now. So the power of amortization when you're talking about cost for specifically materials in a building is extremely important. because the upfront cost really is a false economy. And if a client or a specifier is just looking at the upfront cost of a material, they're really only getting half the story. So when you look at the research from the NAHB or any of the sort of building associations that are looking at how long people are keeping their investments in terms of commercial and residential properties, that time span is getting longer and longer as real estate costs go up. That investment is being held for a much longer period, so that return on investment can be amortized over a longer period as well. On tilethenaturalchoice.com, there's a bunch of research that backs all of this up, but when amortized over an average 50-year lifespan, which is a little longer than the normal investment time frame for a residence or a commercial development, but not that far. When amortized over that kind of time frame, certainly that's the time frame for a building, tile actually becomes the lowest cost option. One of the things that people really don't think about is the replacement frequency. So if you're coming up on a job and they're thinking of a laminate or an LVT or any other competitive material, and they're saying, look, it's so much less expensive, that replacement frequency is a big deal. And the average lifespan of a lot of those products doesn't come anywhere close to the lifespan of tiles. So things like, if you look at an EPD and it talks about the environmental footprint of a product, it also builds in the one-time use of it, but then also a lifespan use. So if you're looking at the cost and environmental impacts of a material, if it has to be replaced every 7 years, you have to multiply that by 7 every 7 years throughout the span of your investment. So that makes a big argument for clients to utilize tile and your services as an installation professional instead of something else. The quality of life factor is another huge thing for clients today, whether they're building owners and operators or it's their principal residence or anything in between. The maintenance cost and the quality of life that goes hand in hand with that is a huge deal for clients and often just tells the return on investment story for you, so you don't have to get into it. One of the most important things, if you take nothing away from today's session other than this one point, one of the most critical things to driving tile success and getting more ceramics into our projects today and getting more business for our ceramic installation professionals is getting the specifiers and clients to decide on tile much, much earlier in the process. If we're involved as installation professionals at a much earlier stage and we know that we're going to be using tile in various areas, it allows us to optimize everything on the site, from when we as trades get in there to how we're controlling the site to how they're designing the space, to substrate tolerances and everything else. One of the most important things is what a huge budget impact this makes if tile is specified during the structural design phase instead of selected as a finishing material. What it does is maximize our material budget, so it allows for more tile instead of a competitive material to be utilized, because it's going to decrease the installation cost and therefore decrease the overall cost of the material. It makes the installer's life so much easier, and I'll show you why. And it means that you're going to be getting more jobs that you like to be doing, and you're going to be much more in control of the site and everything else. What it does, and what I'm talking about, is not necessarily selecting the exact product that you're going to be using. Just making sure that you know the approximate format, if possible, the exact formats that you're going to be using, And definitely that tile is going to go in certain areas and what thickness of tile you're going to be using. That becomes one of the driving factors because that's what's going to set your different heights for your substrates, your different substrates that you're going to be using. And by doing all of that in advance, it does so much for the installation professional in their ability to quote the job effectively and make sure that they're not having to come up with on-the-fly fixes for something because it wasn't planned for. So with tile formats growing, with tile being so much more technical, and there being so many more options of thicknesses to deal with, the earlier that you select tile, it gives you so much more leeway in terms of your installation and the budget for that installation. It also lets you organize your trades really effectively. If it makes more sense for your tile installer to be there early on site before the boarding's done because you're dealing with large format gauge porcelain slabs, and it's easier to maneuver them into the site when you're not dealing with all the walls and you can pass them through the studs and everything else, it just makes it so much better. And the only way to do that is if you already know that you're specifying tile and you can organize your trades in that way. So there's all kinds of different ways for us to make the life for the installer easier so that installation cost goes down, so that our substrate tolerances are all set up, so that they're not having to charge for extra prep work. So here's another thing that I really want to stress for our installers. When you're bidding a job, always bid prep separately. And the earlier that you're involved in the process for bidding, the prep work should be minimized or mitigated as much as possible because you're already helping your design professional or general contractor or the builder or the developer or whoever the stakeholders are. You're talking to them about those substrate tolerances, and whether it's you or whether it's another crew that's going in to do the substrate work, you're making sure that if a pour is going to be not the right option, because then you're going to have to go in with a whole bunch of self-leveler or then screed it anyway afterwards, that you're talking to them and you're doing a screed when that is the best thing, especially if it's a large format gauge porcelain that's going on the floor. So things like that, that you're involved early and your prep work is taken out of the installation budget. That's one thing that artificially inflates the installation costs so many times and actually pulls tile out of specs. Is when the prep cost gets rolled into your installation cost and you just bid 1 square foot charge, including prep, because clients don't understand that. Whereas if it's a separate line item within your quote and prep is quoted separately, they understand that a lot of this maybe could have been alleviated if we had have done the right substrates in the first place rather than a stopgap fix afterwards, and set our substrate tolerances according to the ANSI standards for gauge porcelain if that's what we're doing. If we're doing pavers, so that we drop the grade so that we have room for our sand and gravel fill and things like that. It also allows you to build in for early entry, and sometimes that may let you drop your price for your installation because you have unfettered access to the site. You've got a closed site with nothing in the way, minimizing your cuts because you're doing the flooring before the boarding. You know, there's all kinds of different strategies to get more tile and more work for you as an installation professional and wind up with better projects for the clients in the end. So that's the one takeaway, is to get involved with your design professionals or the clients that you generally work with and make sure they're thinking about tile earlier than they normally would. Tile isn't something that you specify when you're specifying your paints and your wallpapers and every other finish. It truly is a systemic part of the building's operation as well as a finish. So you need to be thinking about it during the systemic or structural design phase. So we talked a lot, sort of touched a lot on gauges, and I want to get into the minimum effective dose because this is one of the biggest advances in our industry that gives us so much power as design professionals and installation professionals to bring more to our clients than they ever expected before. So one of the most interesting things is that tile is, let's say a floor tile, an average floor tile is about 10 millimeters thick. So that's real easy. That's, following normal. So if we reduce a tile thickness by 1 millimeter, it decreases the freight component of the landed cost by 10%, 1/10 of the thickness of the tile. The freight component is a huge cost for us here in North America. It's actually somewhere, depending on the type of product and port that it's coming out of and going into, somewhere between 30 and 50% of the landed cost of the material. So a decrease of 1 millimeter in our specified tile means a huge impact to the landed cost. That upfront savings from our ocean containers is being compounded at least 4 times before it gets to the end user or consumer's cost, because we take it from the port, it gets loaded onto trucks, it gets brought to our distributor. It then gets loaded onto either trains or trucks and goes from the distributor to their branches or their retail network. And all of those costs get added on, where each one of those, if the tile's thinner, it's lighter, we're able to load more into each one of those different freight options. It's decreasing that cost and decreasing the margin multiplication factor as well. So I hope that all makes sense, but 1 millimeter in decreased thickness makes a huge deal. So whether we're talking about porcelain or ceramics, there's all kinds of thinner material that's available on the market today with increased technical capabilities. So getting your head wrapped around the story of gauges and what an impact it makes for your client makes a huge, huge deal. So what it winds up being is about a 3% discount in the overall cost of the material. And I can, if anyone really wants to see the math, I can send it to you. So just send us a question. But it winds up being, plus or minus 3% depending on the product. When you're accounting the different freight, every millimeter that you decrease your cost, which leaves more room in the installation budget to be able to do an install properly. So that lets you leverage the minimum effective dose. It lets you not over-specify, and by not over-specifying in the kind of material, it also lets you decrease the cost of the setting materials in some cases that you're going to be using, which then also lets you either decrease your cost or make more on your installation because you're able to use less expensive setting materials if someone is specifying the minimum effective dose. Again, if we're planning early and being able to strategize and utilize and select from the right kind of, the right gauge of tile for any given area, it lets us do these strategies where we can optimize our substrates and our layouts to minimize the cost. It also lets us design for the finish by scaling our spaces for the formats that we're working with. If you're doing a 1 meter by 1 meter or whatever progressive format, if the space is optimized for that and you've minimized your cuts and you've sort of set your fixtures, your infrastructure, whether it's lighting or wireless access points or anything else that's going into homes and buildings today, if that's optimized and laid out at joint width so you're not having to cut a hole in the middle of a tile, all of these things can be done the earlier tile is planned for. And if the space is optimized for the progressive formats that we have at our fingertips, oftentimes it's a lot easier to get those into our projects. Most importantly for the target audience here is that the tile installers wind up owning a lot more of the process, a lot more of the agency within the substrate tolerances. Whether you're doing it yourself or you're setting those tolerances for other crews to do it, it means that your job in the end is so much easier, so much more headache-free, and it lets you get more work that way. So a job that would normally take a week, because you have to go in and do so much prep to get the substrate to a level that can accept the product that's been specified. If you're involved a lot earlier, it lets you just do what you do best, which is fixing tile to our surfaces, and it provides that lifetime solution for clients in the end. So we talked a lot about slimming down our tile as much as we can to optimize our cost. The other thing that I want to get into, because it's one of the biggest sort of emerging categories of tile, is when we want to go thicker. It seems counterintuitive because a lot of tile's cost is associated with its weight. And weight is what determines how much we can pack into a can, which again then impacts our landed cost of the material. But in some cases, especially for exteriors, a thicker tile, a 20 millimeter thick or 2cm product, is the ideal choice. And a lot of manufacturers today are doing a 10 mil product that's a seamless transition to a 20 mil product for exteriors, so that you can have, like this space down here, a seamless transition from interior to exterior. And the biggest reason why this is so huge is that the ceramic porcelain pavers in the 2cm format are so much higher performance than almost every other competitor, and they're lighter. They have higher technical performance. They have better livability with never needing to be sealed, with high acid, salt, freeze thaw, and stain resistance. You know, it's something that is for the first time ever. It's so easy for our specifiers and for our end users to wrap their heads around this new emerging category. It's something that I'm seeing a lot of traditional tile installation professionals not get into as much as landscape professionals. And it may be a category that you really want to focus on, and maybe bring some landscaping people that have experience doing paving into your crews, so that you can go after jobs that are both tile and exterior pavers, because it truly is a huge booming category. I do a lot of work with hospitality as well as residential design, and I'm seeing pavers being utilized more and more in all sorts of different areas around the US and Canada. So it's something I want to make sure is on your radar, and that you're thinking about. Oops. So finally, we're just going to get into a couple of the top level things that are inherent characteristics of all tile, regardless of the gauge, the format, the size, or anything else, that make a huge deal to our design professionals and our end clients. Number one, tile doesn't need a flame spread rating. It's one of the only things that will not burn or smoke or absorb any of those odors from combustion as well. So tile actually preserves not only the surface itself, but also the substrate in behind it in most cases, and is one of the only things that doesn't have to be replaced following a fire, even in an adjoining room, because almost everything else absorbs the smoke. Because tile is inert and inorganic, it's one of the only things that also survives flood, especially in our modern bathrooms today. A lot of the times we're building them specifically as 100% wet rooms, so the entire thing is waterproof, and in a lot of cases the whole space is one of the few things that survives a flood if it's clad in ceramics. It's one of the only things that doesn't fade when it's exposed to UV light. And both the tile and the installation materials in most cases are zero VOC, both as a primary source, so as you're bringing it into the site, and throughout the life of the building. Actually, LEED under IAQ credit, I think it's 4.3 in 2009, so quite a while ago, exempted ceramics and a few other materials, unfinished woods, unsealed natural stone, and things like that from being tested for VOCs. So a floor score rating, if people are asking you for a floor score rating, which is a VOC rating, if it's ceramic, it's not applicable. So it's one of those things that just adds value after value. The more value that you bring to your clients in terms of your installation, it's just adding more and more value to them at the end. So finally, I want to just quickly go through my sort of bulletproof spec, and if any of you would like an Excel spreadsheet that I use when I'm talking to clients to build out what their perfect specification is, I'm happy to provide that. Just send us an email or comment on the video here, and we'll make sure to get that to you. But it's very, very simple. You just sort of go through a checklist, and you're talking to your client and ticking off the boxes, and it gives you this bulletproof plan, and your client understands the product a lot better, and it lets you utilize your expertise in optimizing the spec for the minimum effective dose to make sure that they get absolutely everything they want. So we list the function of all the areas: indoor, outdoor, floor, wall, dry, wet, occasionally wet. Then we look at what kind of abrasion we're going to be dealing with the tile, whether it's low, medium, or high. That's what kind of soil we're expecting the tile to be exposed to. If it's a beach house, are they going to have sand on their feet when they're coming in? We're going to want to make sure that we have a very high abrasion resistant surface in the entryways coming off the beach. How much traffic and what kind of footwear, which is something that a lot of people don't think about, is what kind of footwear. Does the owner of the house come in with golf cleats on, or soccer cleats, or work boots, or things like that? Like heavy duty footwear is something that we want to think about. Or is it just a residential ensuite bath where we're only ever going to have slippers or bare feet? So that's another key thing. Another one that almost everyone forgets is what's the cleaning regimen that we're going to be looking at. How often do we want to be able to clean, sweep, mop, whatever it may be, to clean the surface of the tile, because that's going to tell you how much variation you want to build in. And then looking at adjoining areas where this tile is going to match up with any other surface, whether it's another tile or another material, and start building in those tolerances for how you want to set your substrate height so that you get that perfect marriage between all of your materials all the way across the project. So that is the end of today's session. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had some takeaways that will help you in your work in the future, help you get more tile into your jobs, and help you get more jobs in general. On behalf of Tile of Spain, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in, and drop a comment, leave us a like, whatever it may be, and stay tuned because we're going to have some more of this stuff coming up. I'm going to be doing one next week on a little bit more centered around design professionals and how they can work with clients to get more tile into specs as well. So thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe out there, and until next time, see you later.